The objective of this lesson is to learn how to write the if statements in Python, and note that if statements are called conditionals. So what are conditionals? In everyday life, we all have to make decisions based on some conditions. For example, you might say to yourself, if it is not raining, I will go to the park. And this is a conditional statement. In computer programming, conditional statements are used to perform different computations or actions depending on whether a condition is true or false. Again, notice that the true and false in Python are written with capital letters. This is the generic format of a if statement in Python. You start it by the keyword if, and then you add expression which comes to either true or false, and then you add some statements below it, and you put a keyword else after it, and you add some statements. Before I talk about the details of the if statement, let me start by a sample program. Imagine we want to write a program that asks the user to input a temperature in Celsius, then converts the input temperature to Fahrenheit, and prints it is hot if the temperature in Fahrenheit is above 90 degrees, and otherwise it prints it is not hot. So to do so, let me start first by opening the Python IDLE and open our previous program which we had. Now let's open our previous sample program to convert Celsius to Fahrenheit and put it side by side with the IDLE. Just to refresh your memory, remember that we converted this program such that it can get the input from the user, converts it to a floating point number Celsius, and then converts the Celsius temperature to Fahrenheit and prints the result. Now in this sample, now we want to add the if statement. So all I have to do is, after it is converted to Fahrenheit, I'm going to add Now let me run this program. And if the user types 40 degrees Celsius, it will be converted to Fahrenheit, which is 104, and of course it says it is hot. Let me talk about some details in this program. First of all, the if statements start with the keyword if, and notice that Python recognizes that it is a keyword and it changes its color. After the if, there is always a statement which should always evaluate to either true or false. In this case, the question is the Fahrenheit temperature, is it greater than 90 or not? If it is, then Python executes the lines which are coming after the if. Otherwise, it will execute the lines which are coming after the else. The next thing that you should notice is that always after the if and also after the else, they are the colon symbols. They are required and they have to be there. Next, you should notice that the statements after the if and after the else are always have tabs before them. This is a Python requirement and you have to follow these rules. And also notice that whatever statement which doesn't have a tab is outside the if. That means no matter what happens, no matter if Fahrenheit is greater than 90 or less than 90, it still executes this statement which also prints the result. So let me just run it again. So let's say this time I say 20 degrees Celsius. Of course, in this case, since the result is 68 degrees Fahrenheit, the statement which asks if the 68 is greater than 90 is not true. That means that the statement after the if statement is not evaluated and Python jumps to the else statement which evaluates this printf statement. And again, notice that this other printf statement, since it is not tabbed, it will always be calculated. To make sure that you understand the importance of the tab statement, let me do something here. First, let me tab this statement and then run my program again and type 40 again. Can you guess what comes out? Notice that this time, even though I type 40, which is the same as it was above here, however, the 104, which is the last printf statement, was not evaluated. The reason is that now this printf statement is part of this else statement. So what happens when the temperature in Fahrenheit is 104 degrees, Python goes through this if statement and asks the question, is 104 greater than 90? The answer is yes. So it comes down here and evaluates this statement. However, it will never evaluate any of these two statements, which are now both of them are under the else statement. Let me put this print back to where it was and run the program again. And if I put 40, of course it will print it is hot, and the last print will be evaluated. One more point to make is that this else statement is an optional statement. What it means that you don't have to have this statement. So let me delete this and see what happens. If I run my program again, and let's say this time I will put 40 degrees, nothing changes and everything is exactly the same, because 40 degrees is equivalent to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. And when Python gets to this expression, the question will be, is 104 greater than 90? Since the answer is yes, Python will execute this printf statement, and then since the other print is completely out of the if, it also executes the next printf statement, which is that, and you see the result. Now if I run this program again, and this time I type 20, let's see what happens. In this case, what happened is Python calculated the equivalent of 20 degrees centigrade, which is equivalent to 68 degrees Fahrenheit. When it gets to this expression, the question is 68 greater than 90? Since the answer is false, Python will ignore whatever comes after if, and since there are no else statement, it just jumps to this last printf statement and only prints the value of the Fahrenheit. So let's see what we learned about the if statement. First of all, we know that if is a keyword. Next, we know that an expression is required after the if, and this expression evaluates to either true or false. For example, if after the if I say 4 is greater than 5, it evaluates, it's like a question. It evaluates, is 4 greater than 5? And the answer is no or false. And that means that we will go to the else state. Next, we learned that after the expression, we always need a colon. Next, we learned that one or more statements follow the if statements, and tab is absolutely required before any of these statements. For example, in here I can say x is equal to 6 and print some words such as hi. The point is that there are one or more statements which will follow the if statement. Next, we learned that we can have an else statement after the if. Remember that else is optional. That means you can either use it, or if you decide, you may not have an else statement after the if. And we also learned that the colon after the else is absolutely required. Next, we learned that after the else we can have one or more statements, and tab again is required. And next, you learn that whatever else statement comes after the else, and if it is not tapped, it is not actually inside the if-else statement. That means no matter what happens in the if statement, this statement will always be evaluated.